a Eureka Timberline Outfitter 6. Eureka makes 3 tents in the Timberline series. The smallest one is designed for 2 people, and then this is their largest one. They call it a Timberline Outfitter 6 because you're supposed to be able to sleep 6 people if you're sleeping on the floor. In my experience with this tent, and I've been using these for about 20 years now, you can get 4 people on the floor if you're sleeping on sleeping pads and in your sleeping bags, 4 people on the floor. Or if you put cots in here, you can get 2 people and your gear, and then you're going to be really nice and comfortable. I would not try to put 6 people in this tent, especially on a remote backcountry trip. If you're weathered in, you're just going to drive each other crazy. Let's talk about a few features of this tent. For starters, it's really easy to set up. You have 4 poles that are all the same length. Each pole has 4 sections and they're shock corded, so they're really easy to put together. The 5th pole is the ridge pole, which you can see up here on the top. That connects to a yoke in the front and in the back, which the legs also connect into. On the Timberline Outfitter 6, the yoke is made out of aluminum. On the smaller ones, it's made out of a nylon plastic type of material. I'm a little bit concerned about that because if somebody steps on it or it gets banged too hard in transit, it's possible that it could break. If it breaks, you're in real trouble because there's really no way to connect all the poles together. So the aluminum one works great. And then you have 2 small pole sections, one that holds up each end of the awning. It just has a small awning in the front, but they also make a vestibule for it, which tucks up underneath here, and it creates a covered storage area in the front. A couple other features I like about this tent: it has double doors. So I've got a door right here in the front. I've also got one in the back. Both doors have full mosquito netting that goes all the way down to here. So if I want to ventilate this tent, I can open that up. I've got really good ventilation. It's got a very heavy-duty zipper, a YKK zipper, that runs from the top all the way to the bottom of the door, and then there's a separate zipper that runs across, so I can open that door all the way if I'm putting in large items like cots and so on. It also has a bathtub floor, but it's technically not a true bathtub floor. A true bathtub floor is just one solid swatch of fabric that comes part way up the sidewalls. But because the Outfitter 6 is such a large tent, they have to put a seam in the floor. There's actually 2 seams in the floor on this one, so technically it falls outside the true bathtub floor definition. However, I've been out with this tent many times in severe weather and I've never had a leak yet. I take really good care of my tents, but this one has been just superb. Now the floor material does come part way up the sidewalls and a little bit in the front here. You can see I've got a little bit of the floor material showing up here, but this material here, including the door material, is all waterproof. And the reason for that is if I get blasted with some wind-driven rain coming right at my doorway, I don't want water misting through the door of my tent. So what they did is they put a nice waterproof material on the front end and also on the back end of the tent, and then the tent body itself is a breathable nylon material. In addition to that, on the sides of this tent, you can see my rainfly comes all the way down, almost all the way to the ground, and of course here on the sides, the floor fabric comes part way up the sidewalls. We'll look at that in more detail here in a minute. All right, let's take a look at some of the details on this tent. Here's my rainfly coming down to the corner, and there's a large split ring in the corner of the tent body down here. Trying to get it loose, and the rainfly is connected with this bungee cord and a little hook, and that hooks right onto the D-ring. So when I'm putting my tent together, I'm just going to reach down here and hook that hook on the D-ring. So it works really well. Oh, by the way, this bungee cord is a really nice feature. We're going to talk about that with some of our other tent designs that we're looking at. I wish more tent companies would use bungee cord on their tie-down points because it eliminates a lot of stress. If I have really severe winds pushing on the sidewalls of this tent, that bungee has a little bit of give to it, and it will keep me from ripping out my gussets in really severe winds. With this tent, it's not going to be so much of a factor because this tent has such high sidewalls. I'm not going to use this in a high wind area anyway. This tent is mostly for timbered country like we're set up right here. All right, we're throwing the rainfly back a little bit here. And what we're looking at here is there's a gusset sewn into the sidewall of the tent, and there's a clip on the inside of the rainfly, which, by the way, the rainfly also has a double thickness of material in this area. And what you're going to do is you're going to clip your rainfly to that clip, And then when you put it all back together, I'm going to go ahead and secure our rain fly back to that hook. When you put it all back together, you'll notice on the top there's also a D-ring here. And that allows you to put another tie-down cord. I've already got a tie-down at the bottom here, which I can cinch down, but this other tie-down gives me some additional support for the tent, and if I had really heavy wind, I could take that and tie it out to the brush or secure it to another tent stake. But there's a couple of really nice things about this. What they've done is they've attached that D-ring at the same attachment point where that inner clip goes on the tent body. So by pulling this out, I'm also pulling the tent body out, and that creates a lot more room inside the tent. So my sidewalls are not going to sag like they would on a normal tent design. So I can pull that out and secure it to a tree. I can tie it out to the brush. I can do whatever I want with it, but I'm going to pick up more room in the tent by securing those clips. It's a really, really nice feature. By the way, these tie-down cords, I would also recommend that you put some bungee on these, and that'll give your tent a little bit of give in a high wind situation. I don't have bungee on this one, but I normally do that on all my tents, and illustrates the need for bringing a lot of this with you. This is parachute cord. The military boys call it 550 cord. It comes in OD green if you're that way. Want to use the green, it's fine with me, I don't care. But I'll take a couple of rolls of this and throw them in the bottom of my tent bag. You just never can have enough tie-down cords. Let's take a look at some of the other tie-down points on this tent. Okay, we're at the doorway area of the tent again. This is my rain fly coming down right here. Here's my door area right in here. Right up on the top here, I've got a D-ring sewn in to my rain fly. I have there's another one on the other side. I've got one here and one on the opposite corner, and then I have a pair of them at the other end of the tent. And what I can do here is I can tie off my tie-down rope, or I can use my parachute cord, and I can run a line from that straight over to a tree. I can use it as a clothesline if I want. I can hang things on it to dry or whatnot. But it's really nice because I can run a cord all the way over and really nail this tent down stoutly. Again, this is not a tent that's designed for a high wind area, but having those tie down points up at the top and down along the sides and at the bottom of the rain fly gives me a lot of ways to nail this tent down in severe wind and rain. I've had this tent out in Unit 9. We did a brown bear hunt one year over in the Iliamna area, and we had really severe winds. I think the wind was probably blowing up to 80 miles an hour. We had water spouts out on the lake in front of our camp. We didn't have this tent sitting out in the open. We had it pitched in the timber. In fact, what we did is we found 4 trees that were fairly close together, and we pitched it right in the middle of all 4 trees. But these tie-down points were very useful. We actually tied this out directly to those trees. It was very stout. The tent wasn't going anywhere. And I'll tell you, when you're in a condition like that with severe wind and severe rain for multiple days, it's really nice to have some secure shelter out there where you can go inside, you're nice and dry and warm. Let's take a look at a few of the features inside this tent that make it one of my favorites. I always like to take my shoes off before I get in my tent, keep the floor in good condition that way. And by the way, we have a tarp under this tent to also protect the floor. So let's look around in here and kind of get an idea of what we're dealing with the Timberline Outfitter 6. For starters, you can see our bathtub floor. Again, not a true bathtub floor because we've got a seam right here and a seam right here, but they're seam taped and sealed really good, so I'm very confident that this tent's going to be just fine in wet weather, and I've had no trouble with leaks or anything like that. But the sidewall, the floor fabric goes part way up the sidewall, comes up a good 12 to 14 inches. So we've got plenty of protection there. And what this area is for when you have wind-driven rain that comes at the side of the tent and it might blow up underneath the rain fly. This additional height right here prevents the rain from misting through the sidewall of your tent. Also, you can see down here at the other end, I've got the door open part way. Actually, not the door, I've just got the mosquito netting up, but I've unzipped the door panel so we've got good ventilation. What I normally do is I'll take this door fabric and I'll just tuck it back over like that instead of letting it hang like that. It's a little bit more out of the way that way. So we can do that. Also up here at the top, And you can see I'm 6 feet tall. I can stand up in this tent without hitting my head. I really like that. Up at the top here, we've got D-rings here that I've tied parachute cord in here, and I can use these for a clothesline inside my tent. So that's a really nice feature of this tent. And then the final thing I want to point out is, look how light the color is on the inside. We've got the rainfly on this tent, and I've got plenty of light in here where I can read, I can go through my gear, I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to worry about feeling like I'm in a dark cave. It's a really nice feature. So the Timberline Outfitter 6, plenty of room inside for 4 people on the floor or 2 on cots. It'll stand up to some of the worst conditions Alaska has to offer, as long as you park yourself in a protected area. I strongly recommend the Timberline Outfitter 6 on float hunts in timbered country, fishing trips, anything like that, where you're going to be in an area where you can get some shelter from the wind. I've used them up in the Arctic, and we would just park them in the willows. So there are places where you want to be careful about a tent like this, but for most of Alaska, the Timberline Outfitter 6 is going to do you just fine. You'll really enjoy this tent.